The crack of a single rifle shot echoed across the blood-soaked sands of Tarawa Atoll, piercing the humid Pacific air like a knife through flesh. It was dawn on the 21st of November 1943, and another Marine had just crumpled into the dirt, a perfect headshot from an invisible enemy, turning a young man's life into just another statistic in the brutal tally of World War II's island-hopping campaign. How could one farm boy from the heartland of Kansas, armed with nothing but a childhood lesson in outsmarting pesky crows, turn the tide against an army of elite Japanese snipers who had turned this tiny coral speck into a slaughterhouse? In the chaos of the 2nd Marine Division's assault on Betio Island, part of the larger Tarawa operation, these hidden marksmen were reaping a harvest of death, picking off Americans with chilling precision. 800 of them, trained for years in the art of invisibility and lethal accuracy, had dug in deep, waiting patiently in palm fronds, concrete bunkers, and spider holes camouflaged under layers of sand and vegetation. The invasion had begun just a day earlier, on November 20, with waves of Marines storming the beaches under a hail of artillery and machine gun fire. But it wasn't the big guns or the suicidal banzai charges that were bleeding the division dry, it was the snipers. These weren't amateur opportunists, they were specialists from the Imperial Japanese Army's sniper schools, established back in 1937, where recruits endured 18 months of grueling training in camouflage, range estimation, and marksmanship that allowed them to nail man-sized targets at 600 yards using only iron sights. By the time the Americans landed, these snipers had spent 3 months fortifying their positions, mapping every inch of the island, and plotting escape routes. Their tactic was simple yet devastating. Fire once, relocate 30 to 50 yards to a pre-scouted spot, and vanish like ghosts. In the first 72 hours, they claimed 47 Marine lives, with single, surgically placed bullets, most to the head or chest. No mercy, no survivors. Private First Class Marcus Holland, a two-year-old rifleman with only 4 days of combat under his belt, huddled in a shallow foxhole, his M1 Garand clutched tightly as he watched a corporal slither forward to scout enemy lines. The air reeked of cordite and decay, the ground trembled from distant explosions, and every rustle in the palms could mean death. Holland had seen it happen too many times already, good men exposing just a fraction of themselves, only to be dropped by a shot from nowhere. American officers threw everything at the problem. Artillery barrages on suspected nests, flamethrower squads torching entire groves, machine guns raking tree lines. Nothing stuck. The snipers adapted, firing from new angles each time, averaging 6 American casualties before any one of them was taken out. The math was merciless. The 2nd Division was hemorrhaging seasoned fighters faster than reinforcements could wade ashore from the landing craft. But in that moment of desperation, as Holland's mind raced through the nightmare unfolding around him, a spark ignited from his unlikely past. Back on the 640-acre wheat farm outside Liberal, Kansas, where he grew up amid endless golden fields, survival had hinged on outwitting nature's thieves, swarms of crows that could strip rows bare in hours. In 1937, his family lost 38% of their crop to those black-winged pests, wiping out 3 months' income in a blink. At 13, his father handed him a Winchester .22 and boxes of ammo, making the harvest his responsibility. "Don't chase him," his old man had said. "Make him come to you on your terms." It was a lesson in psychology, not just shooting. Create false targets, lure the crows into committing, and exploit their predictable patterns. Holland had rigged his first decoy, a hay-stuffed shirt on a cross, and watched as the birds dove, missed, and regrouped in the same trees every time. By season's end, head bagged 280, saving 94% of the yield. Now, staring at the sniper-riddled battlefield, he saw the parallel. These Japanese sharpshooters were just crows with rifles, waiting for movement, striking with instinct, and vanishing. What if the Marines stopped being the easy prey? What if they turned the tables with something as simple as a helmet on a stick? Tarawa Atoll wasn't just another dot on the map in the vast Pacific. It was a fortress disguised as paradise, a cluster of coral islands where the Japanese had transformed every inch of terrain into a deadly trap. Betio Island, the main target, stretched barely 2 miles long and half a mile wide, ringed by reefs that turned amphibious landings into nightmares. Palm trees swayed innocently overhead, but their fronds concealed sniper nests 40 feet up, where shooters could perch like eagles surveying a killing field. Below ground, a labyrinth of spider holes, shallow pits camouflaged with sand, vegetation, and even coconut logs allowed marksmen to pop up, fire, and vanish without a trace. Concrete bunkers, reinforced with steel and earth, dotted the landscape, their narrow firing ports offering perfect lines of sight across the beaches and interior. Some snipers even rigged bamboo platforms inside drainage ditches or water cisterns, emerging through tiny slits to strike before pulling covers over themselves, blending seamlessly into the environment. This wasn't random chaos. It was a meticulously engineered death zone, where the island's geography amplified the sniper's advantages, turning visibility into a one-way street Americans exposed in the open, Japanese hidden in shadows. The enemy Holland and his fellow Marines faced were no ordinary soldiers. These were the elite of the Imperial Japanese Army's Sniper Corps, products of specialized schools that had been churning out masters of the craft since 1937. Selected for their sharp eyes, steady hands, and iron discipline, candidates underwent 18 months of intensive preparation, crawling through mud to master camouflage, estimating ranges without scopes, and drilling marksmanship until they could drop targets at 600 yards with basic Arisaka rifles equipped only with iron sights. By 1943, Japan had deployed around 1,200 such specialists across the theater, with a staggering 800 concentrated on Tarawa alone. They'd arrived in August, giving them 3 full months to scout, dig in, and perfect their setups. Each sniper operated like a modern samurai, bound by a code of precision and patience that echoed the Bushido spirit: honor in the kill, efficiency in the evasion. They viewed the invading Americans not as equals, but as lumbering prey, easy marks in their bulky gear, silhouetted against the horizon as they advanced from the beaches. Their signature tactic, the one-shot relocate, was a ballet of lethality. Squeeze off a single round from a primary position, then slip away to a secondary spot, 30 to 50 yards distant, all while Marines scrambled to respond. If the Americans charged the original nest, the sniper would pick them off from the new vantage. If not, headweight, silent and unseen, for the next opportunity. This wasn't hit-and-run opportunism. It was calculated predation, designed to erode morale as much as manpower. Headshots and chest hits were the norm. They aimed to kill outright, not wound, ensuring each bullet maximized damage. By November 21, the third day of the invasion, sniper fire had accounted for 91 Marine casualties, most fatal, turning the island into a graveyard where experienced riflemen vanished one by one. Holland's own squad had felt the sting. Private First Class Anthony DeMarco, a sharp mechanic from San Francisco, gone during the landing after peeking over a crater rim. Lance Corporal Thomas Berkeley, a Guadalcanal vet who knew better than to expose himself, drilled through the chest mid-dash, and Corporal David Torres, their seasoned leader, neck shot from a palm tree 200 yards out. These weren't faceless losses. Holland had trained with DeMarco at Camp Pendleton, shared shipboard stories with Berkeley en route to the Pacific, and followed Torres orders for months. Each death chipped away at the unit's spirit, leaving survivors like Holland, Corporal Vincent Russo from Brooklyn, Private Lawrence Bennett from Oklahoma, and Private First Class Daniel Carpenter from Georgia hunkered down, hearts pounding, wondering who was next. Yet, in Holland's eyes, these snipers mirrored the crows that had plagued his family's farm: cunning, relentless, but driven by instinct that could be exploited. Crows descended on wheat fields at the first sign of vulnerability, stripping yields with surgical strikes, much like the Japanese, waiting for any flicker of movement to unleash death. Both were patient hunters, regrouping after attacks in predictable ways if you knew how to provoke them. The crows had taught Holland that predators commit to targets based on shape and motion, following patterns once lured in. The snipers operated the same, a helmet cresting a berm, a figure shifting between foxholes. They couldn't resist the impulse to engage what looked like an easy kill. But just as Head learned to make crows waste their energy on decoys, Holland began to wonder if the same principle could force these human predators to reveal themselves, turning their discipline into a fatal flaw. The island's brutal math, 6 Marines down for every sniper eliminated, demanded a rethink, and Holland's farm-bred ingenuity was about to challenge the doctrine that had failed so far. Marcus Holland's world before the war was a far cry from the hellish sands of Tarawa, a vast expanse of golden wheat fields rolling under the endless Kansas sky, where the rhythm of life was dictated by seasons, soil, and the whims of nature. Born in 1921 on his family's 640-acre spread outside Liberal, a dusty town in the southwestern corner of the state, Holland grew up with calloused hands and a keen eye sharpened by necessity. The farm wasn't just home, it was a battlefield of its own, where crows descended like dark omens every August, threatening to devour the harvest that meant survival for the family. In 1937, when Holland was just 16, those feathered raiders claimed 38% of the crop, $340 gone in a swarm of beaks and wings, enough to erase 3 months of back-breaking labor and push the family to the brink. His father, a stoic man hardened by the Dust Bowl years, saw the writing in the sky and handed young Marcus a Winchester .22 rifle along with 12 boxes of ammunition. "The wheat's on you now, son," he said, his voice gravelly from years of prairie wind. "Lose it to those birds, and we don't plant next spring." But it wasn't just about pulling the trigger. Holland's father imparted a deeper wisdom, one that went beyond marksmanship to the art of deception and patience. "Don't waste your shots chasing shadows," he'd advise, squinting at the horizon. "Make the crows commit to you. Lure 'em in, let their greed blind 'em, and strike when they're exposed." It was a lesson in understanding the psychology of predators. Crows, like any hunter, reacted to movement and shape, diving impulsively at what seemed like easy pickings, only to follow predictable paths when confused. Holland's first rig was rudimentary, an old shirt stuffed with hay, crucified on a wooden cross, jerked to life by a string from 50 yards away. The birds would swoop, talons extended, missing the mark and circling back to regroup in the same cluster of trees every time, their patterns as reliable as the sunrise. Perched in those branches with his .22, Holland picked them off one by one 47 inches the first week alone, escalating to 280 by harvest's end. That year, the yield hit 94%, the best the family had ever seen, turning potential ruin into abundance. Holland never delved into the details with his father, just shrugged and said, "It worked." But inwardly he grasped the elegance of it. By creating false vulnerabilities, you controlled the engagement, forcing the enemy to reveal itself on your terms. It was about outthinking, not outgunning, turning instinct against the instinctive. This farm-forged philosophy stayed buried in him through his enlistment in the Marines, basic training at Camp Pendleton, and the long voyage across the Pacific. He was just another Midwestern kid thrust into the grinder of global war, assigned to the 2nd Marine Division as a rifleman, green but gritty. 4 days into Tarawa, however, as the sniper's toll mounted, those childhood memories resurfaced like ghosts from the fields. Watching Marines fall to unseen bullets, men like DeMarco, whose quick wit had lightened boot camp drills, Berkeley, whose Guadalcanal scars spoke of hard-won wisdom, and Torres, the unflappable leader who drilled discipline into the squad, the parallels hit Holland like a Kansas thunderstorm. The snipers were the crows, the Marines, the exposed wheat, and the island a vast, lethal farm where the harvest was lives. In the foxhole with Russo, Bennett, and Carpenter, their faces etched with exhaustion and fear, Holland felt the old lessons stirring. What if they applied the same trick? Not charging blindly, but baiting the predators, making them waste their precision on illusions while exposing their hides. It was a gamble born of desperation, but in Holland's mind, it was no different from rigging that hay-stuffed shirt, simple, effective, and rooted in the unyielding logic of survival. In the stifling heat of that Tarawa foxhole, with the distant thud of artillery punctuating the tense silence, Marcus Holland couldn't shake the image of those Kansas crows anymore. It had been brewing in his mind for 3 days, ever since the landing turned into a sniper's paradise. The Japanese marksmen weren't just shooting, they were dictating the fight, forcing Marines to hug the ground like scared rabbits while picking them off at leisure. American counter-sniper tactics, straight from the manual, called for spotting the shooter, hammering the position with suppressive fire, and then closing in to clear it out. But that assumed you could actually see the enemy. With only 12 trained Marine scout snipers spread across the entire division, facing down 800 Japanese pros, the odds were stacked like a bad poker hand. Holland had watched it fail time and again. Artillery shells cratering empty spots, flamethrowers scorching groves that hid nothing, machine guns chewing up foliage while the real threats slithered away unseen. By the morning of November 21, Holland's squad was down to the bone, Russo, Bennett, Carpenter, and him, all nursing the raw grief of lost brothers and the gnawing fear that they were next. Russo, the battle-hardened Brooklynite who'd survived Guadalcanal and already buried 8 men on this rock, was barking orders in a whisper, his eyes scanning the tree line for any flicker. That's when Holland broke the silence, his voice steady but laced with that Midwestern drawl. "What if we don't go after M? What if we make 'em come to us like baiting crows back home?" Russo fixed him with a stare that could curdle milk, 10 long seconds ticking by as the idea hung in the air. Holland laid it out, drawing from those farm lessons. Create false targets to draw fire, force the snipers to commit and reveal their muzzle flashes, then hit back hard. No charging into the unknown, no wasting ammo on ghosts, just smart psychology, turning their precision against them. Russo, ever the pragmatist, didn't dismiss it outright. "Show me," he grunted, curiosity edging out skepticism. The others, Bennett with his Oklahoma twang, Carpenter from Georgia's Red Clay leaned in, their doubt palpable but tempered by desperation. They'd all seen the doctrine flop. Maybe a farm trick was worth a shot. Holland grabbed a spare helmet and jammed a bayonet through its crown, creating a crude puppet on a 14-inch steel rod. Crouching below the foxhole's rim, he slowly raised it, mimicking a marine peeking over cover, a subtle bob, just enough to suggest life. From 50 yards out, it would look real enough, a helmet silhouette against the sky, an inviting target for any sniper scanning for heads. The squad held their breath, the island's cacophony fading into a heartbeat-pounding wait. 15 seconds stretched like hours. Then crack! A rifle shot split the air, the bullet slamming into the helmet with a metallic ping, bending the bayonet but leaving the decoy intact. They all flattened instinctively, adrenaline surging, but Holland was already grinning ear to ear. "See the flash?" he whispered urgently. Bennett, binoculars glued to his eyes, nodded sharp. Palm tree, northwest. About 80 yards, 30 feet up in the fronds. Holland yanked the helmet down, inspecting the clean hole punched right through the front, dead center where a forehead would be. If that had been flesh and bone, another Marine would be gone. But it wasn't, it was scrap metal and steel, a lie that had just unmasked a killer. Russo didn't waste a beat. He shouldered his Browning automatic rifle, a beast of a gun with 20 rounds of 30-06 ready to roar, and unleashed a full magazine into the indicated tree. Leaves shredded, branches snapped, and then a heavy thud echoed as something tumbled down, crashing through the canopy to the ground below. Bennett and Carpenter crept forward under covering fire, hearts in their throats, and found the sniper sprawled at the base dead, a bar round through his chest, his Arisaka rifle beside him with 7 rounds still chambered. The kill sent a ripple through the squad, doubt evaporating like morning mist. It wasn't luck, it was proof. The decoy had forced the sniper to burn a shot on nothing, exposing his perch in the process. And crucially, as Holland explained while they regrouped, these weren't random shooters, they operated in defined zones with primary, secondary, and fallback positions. Provoke a few shots, map the flashes, and you could zero in on their turf, saturating it with fire or calling in the big guns. Carpenter pressed for more. "You got proof this ain't a fluke?" Holland shot back, bagged 280 crows with it. "Snipers are just crows that shoot back." Russo, convinced, slapped Holland on the shoulder. "Rig up more. We're taking this fight to him." By noon, Holland had jury-rigged 8 decoys from whatever was at hand, helmets on bayonets, sticks, even entrenching tool handles. Simple tools. But in that moment, they felt like game-changers, a spark of hope in a sea of despair. With those 8 makeshift decoys in hand, Russo wasted no time organizing the squad into a methodical hunt. They paired up, one Marine to manipulate the helmet puppet, easing it above cover with a lifelike twitch, while the other scanned through binoculars for that telltale muzzle flash. The first post-palm tree takedown came at 1,327 hours, when Holland hoisted a decoy near a shattered bunker. A sniper bit from 120 yards out, his bullet whizzing 6 inches wide. Bennett pinpointed the spider hole tucked beside a wrecked Japanese tank, and Carpenter drilled 3 M1 Garand rounds into it. Later, when they cleared the spot, the enemy lay crumpled inside 2 hits, one through the shoulder, the other splitting his skull. No more shots from that hole. The next one proved Kajia, holding fire through 3 raises of the basic helmet. Holland improvised, tying a scrap of torn uniform to the rim to suggest a body lurking below, then lifting it slower, more tentatively, like a wary Marine scouting ahead. The ruse worked, the sniper fired, nailing the helmet square on. Carpenter caught the flash from a concrete pillbox 90 yards east. Russo radioed for a flamethrower crew, who advanced under a hail of covering rifle fire and roasted the structure. The marksman perished in the inferno, his position reduced to smoldering ruins. By 1600 hours, the squad had racked up 7 confirmed sniper kills, all without a single American casualty. Word rippled through the 2nd Battalion faster than official dispatches, Marines whispering about the helmet trick during lulls in the fighting. Other units caught on quick, scavenging spare gear to craft their own versions, helmets on sticks for the basics, sandbag-stuffed uniforms for more convincing mannequins. Even mud and rag dummy heads posed like dozing troops in foxholes. From 100 yards, it all blurred into temptation, a head peeking, a figure shifting, and the snipers, trained to seize such moments, couldn't always resist. The psychological edge was profound. These Japanese elites prided themselves on discipline, on never squandering ammo, yet here they were, expending precious rounds on phantoms, their samurai-like composure cracking under the frustration of repeated misses. As the tactics spread, its impact snowballed. On November 22, the fourth day, sniper-inflicted casualties plummeted to 19, a stark drop from the previous day's 47. Marines moved with newfound boldness, darting between positions without the constant dread of invisible death. The decoys didn't just expose shooters, they disrupted the entire rhythm of the defense, forcing snipers to second-guess every potential target. Japanese commanders, sensing the shift, issued urgent adaptations: ignore solitary helmets, hold fire unless the mark was clearly animated, moving, talking, part of a group. But this caution came at a steep price. Snipers, bound by their rigid training, started passing up shots they'd have taken before, allowing American advances to gain momentum. The island's capture accelerated, with squads now triangulating zones and saturating them with mortars or BAR bursts, whittling down the once formidable 800 to ragged remnants. One standout adaptation unfolded on November 23, when Staff Sergeant William Parker, an Ohio native commanding a 12-man squad, targeted a notorious Central Command bunker that had claimed 11 Marines over 4 days. The sniper inside cycled through multiple firing ports in the reinforced concrete beast, dodging suppression like a shadow. Parker, who'd lost 4 of his own to the menace, rallied his men to build 6 decoys. His plan: deploy them simultaneously from varied angles around the bunker, overwhelming the shooter's choice. At 1,015 hours, up they went, a chorus of tempting silhouettes. The sniper cracked, blasting one clean through. The flash lit up the northwest port, and Parker's team converged, 30 rifle rounds, 2 BAR volleys, and a satchel charge lobbed inside. The explosion silenced the threat for good. Clearing the bunker later revealed the marksman mangled by the blast, his Arisaka still aimed outward. Parker's multi-decoy ambush became blueprint material, replicated across the division. By November 24, estimates pegged 340 Japanese snipers eliminated, most lured out by these farm-inspired ploys. The killing fields the enemy had so carefully prepared flipped into their own tomb, with ammo expenditure tripling as shooters fired at ghosts. Yet even as the Japanese grappled with humiliation, their vaunted precision mocked by crude tricks, some couldn't shake their instincts, firing anyway and sealing their fates. The tactics evolution continued beyond Tarawa, morphing into full mannequins with plaster heads on Saipan, remote-pulled wires for motion on Iwo Jima, and even hand-pumped bellows simulating breath on Okinawa. Each iteration built on Holland's core insight: bait the predator, exploit the pattern, and turn their strength into vulnerability. 6. Ho Kwa Kanyan Va Di San Quan Su. Holland's ingenuity didn't earn him a medal or even a footnote in the official dispatches from Tarawa. The Marine Corps chalked it up to improved small unit tactics and field innovations bubbling up multiple squads at once. No single name attached, no commendation for the farm boy who'd flipped the script on a sniper siege. On November 25, as the island finally fell under American control, Holland took shrapnel from a Japanese artillery shell, non-fatal wounds to his left leg and shoulder that earned him a Purple Heart and an evac to a hospital ship, then on to Pearl Harbor for recovery. He never tallied the lives his decoy trick might have spared, never lingered on the what-ifs. In his squad alone, Russo, Bennett, and Carpenter made it through, crediting the helmets on sticks for giving them the edge to fight another day. But the bigger picture, pieced together later by historians poring over casualty logs and after-action reports, painted a staggering impact. Between 120 and 180, Marines likely survived Tarawa thanks to the technique's rapid adoption, with projections climbing to 600 across the Pacific if you factored in its ripple to later campaigns. Back in Kansas by 1946, after 22 months in the theater, including stints on Saipan and Tinian, plus a second wounding and another Purple Heart, Holland slipped quietly into civilian life, as if the war were just a stormy season head weathered. He rejoined his father on the wheat farm, the same 640 acres that had schooled him in deception, and picked up where Head left off, ploughing fields, mending fences, and warding off crows each August with the same decoy rigs that had humbled Japanese sharpshooters. His yields averaged 93%, tops in the county, a testament to the principle's enduring power. In 1947, he married his high school sweetheart, Dorothy, a steady Kansas girl Wad waited through the letters and the worry. They raised 3 kids in a modest farmhouse, where Holland applied his hard-won wisdom not to warfare, but to everyday puzzles, teaching his children to fool the problem before it fools you, whether it was rigging scarecrows for the birds, or outsmarting a stubborn tractor engine with makeshift fixes. He rarely spoke of the Pacific, brushing off questions with a simple, "I was an infantryman, fought the Japs, that's all." It wasn't bravado or trauma he buried, it was a deliberate choice to let the past rest, sparing his family the shadows of foxholes and fallen friends, focusing instead on the tangible joys of harvest moons and family suppers. Yet Holland's shadow loomed large in the Marine Corps evolution, even if his name didn't. Post-war studies dissected the Pacific sniper threat, crunching data from veteran interviews and campaign reports, and confirmed the decoy's game-changing role. Units employing it saw 67% fewer casualties from hidden fire compared to those sticking to old doctrines. By the late 1940s, helmet decoys were woven into infantry training, every squad learning to craft and deploy them as standard procedure. The tactic endured through Korea, where Marines baited North Korean snipers in rugged hills, and into Vietnam, with recon teams using inflatable mannequins or thermal-emitting lures to draw out Viet Cong ambushes in dense jungles. It wasn't flashy tech, it was battlefield smarts, proving that innovation often sprang from the ranks, not the brass, ignoring manuals when they got men killed and trusting gut instincts honed in unlikely places like Kansas wheat fields. Holland's contribution, though unattributed, reshaped how the Corps fought, emphasizing adaptability over rote tactics, a quiet revolution that saved countless boots on the ground. Holland's story might have faded into the yellowed pages of forgotten battalion logs, if not for the dogged work of military historians and fellow veterans who, decades later, pieced together the fragments of his quiet heroism. In 1988, a researcher digging through National Archives reports on Tarawa's counter-sniper efforts stumbled upon a November 1943 entry crediting Private First Class Marcus Holland with pioneering improvised target decoys that turned the pustable flaw tide for his unit. Tracking him down via veteran registries, the historian found Holland at 67, still tending the Kansas farm, rifle in hand during harvest, to fend off crows with the same tricks that had outfoxed Japanese marksmen. Over coffee in his kitchen, Holland downplayed it all. Wasn't special, just what Dad taught me about birds. Worked on snipers too. But the numbers the historian crunched told a different tale, estimating 120 to 180 lives saved on Tarawa alone, ballooning to 600 across the Pacific as the tactic proliferated. Even earlier, in 1972, Staff Sergeant William Parker, now a retired career NCO Houday, served in Korea and molded recruits at Paris Island, made the pilgrimage to Kansas. Parker, who'd adapted Holland's idea into that 6-decoy bunker assault, knocked on the farmhouse door unannounced. Over a shared meal, he recounted teaching the technique to thousands of Marines over 2 decades, watching it pull men through hairy spots in later wars. "You earned the Navy Cross for that," Parker insisted, but Holland waved it off. "Just kept my boys alive." Any crow hunter would have done it. Parker's 1965 retirement speech had already nodded to the Kansas farm kid behind the helmet trick, planting seeds that would grow through veteran networks. The full weight hit home at Holland's 1994 funeral in Liberal, where complications from diabetes claimed him at 73. Amid the small gathering of family, friends, and a handful of old squad mates, 4 strangers appeared, ex-Marines from different eras, drawn by whispers in those networks. They shared tales of surviving thanks to decoy training. One from Korea baiting hilltop snipers, another from Vietnam luring VC with inflatable dummies. Holland's kids, who'd grown up knowing their dad as a steady farmer and Purple Heart vet, learned the depth of his legacy that day: the crows, the wheat, the Tarawa breakthrough that echoed through generations. That rediscovery underscores the tactic's timeless relevance, even as warfare has morphed into a high-tech arena of drones, thermal scopes, and precision strikes. By the 1982, physical decoys gave way to electronic countermeasures, but the Marine Corps Basic School still drills officers on the helmet trick as a prime example of improvisation under fire. Spot the problem, draw from real life, implement fast. In today's conflicts, the principle lives on in digital decoys, false radar blips, fooling missiles, or dummy heat signatures, drawing out insurgents, proving that outsmarting the enemy often boils down to basic psychology, not gadgets. Holland's farm wisdom reminds modern warriors that innovation isn't always engineered in labs. Sometimes it's born in foxholes or fields, a simple pivot that saves lives when doctrine falls short. In the quiet expanse of a Kansas wheat field, under the same vast sky that had witnessed his boyhood battles with crows, Marcus Holland's simple innovation echoes as a testament to the unsung ingenuity that wins wars. A helmet on a stick, crude, unassuming, didn't just outwit 800 elite snipers on Tarawa. It rewrote the rules of engagement, slashing Marine losses and paving the way for victories across the Pacific. Yet Holland's name remains etched not in bronze memorials or history textbooks, but in the subtle threads of doctrine that still shape how America's warriors adapt and survive. He passed in 1994 without fanfare, his obituary noting only his service and wounds, oblivious to the 143 lives his farm trick directly preserved, or the thousands more influenced by the tactics spread. Today, fragments of his legacy persist in the National Archives battalion reports, historian transcripts, and a glass case at the Marine Corps Museum in Quantico, where a bayonet-pierced helmet stands as a relic of improvised decoys from November 1943. Training films from the 1950 seconds drill the method, raise the bait, spot the flash, strike without crediting the man behind it. But perhaps that's fitting for a hero who never sought the spotlight, who returned to his roots and hunted crows for another 40 years, his harvests thriving on the same principles that humbled human predators half a world away. As we reflect on stories like Holland's, let's honor the forgotten innovators by delving into our own history, visiting archives, talking to veterans, keeping alive the tales of those who turned everyday wisdom into extraordinary triumphs. In a world of high-tech warfare, his lesson endures. Sometimes, the greatest victories come not from might, but from the quiet cleverness of the heartland.